Hi, I'm going to walk you through the process of setting up a camera match in Arnold and 3ds using 3ds Max and Arnold. Okay, so first things first, in our 3ds Max space, we're going to introduce an image into this background area here, and the way we're going to do it is we're going to use the material browser. So I'll just pull across the material browser. M obviously is the shortcut for you, and you're just going to create, I've got one created here already, but I'll just show you how I created it. So it's just a case of materials, Arnold, surface, standard surface gets you your blank material, and then from the base color drag out and just go for general and bitmap. And from the bitmap, you need to navigate to wherever you have a environment image stored. So I've got mine already ready to go inside my import folder inside 3ds Max 2023. And I've chosen this one for a particular reason. You'll see it in a moment. It should make your life a little bit easier. So here we go. So these two, so this and that are exactly the same. So I'll just bin that because I don't need to have two versions of the same material. Okay, so we've got our standard material which has an environment image attached to it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hopefully reduce the size of that. Just pull that down out of the way for a second. Let's get my focus there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call up my environment panel, and that's either through rendering and environment or 8. And this image that we used before, a couple of things we need to do with it. Just make sure that when you click on it inside your material window, just make sure you're clicking on the map, the bitmap itself, not the standard material. So click on the bitmap so that you've got this window available. Make sure that it's not set to texture. We want it set to environment and screen. Okay, that's important. So environment and screen is the setting that we need to configure there. Okay, once you've done that, do click on the standard material. Okay, so now that we've got the standard material active, we can see that little letter M which tells us that's our bitmap material. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that across to the environment map, and when it lands, I'm going to choose the instance option. Okay, so choose instance, and basically what that does, he says, is it makes sure that basically anything that I do to this map is influenced is replicated in this map. It's the one and the same map in effect. Okay, while I'm inside environment and effects, I'm going to go to my exposure control and change that to physical camera, and turn the actual use physical camera settings off. Don't really use those, to be honest. There's a bunch of reasons, but I'll not go into them now. I'm going to set my EV to about 8, I think, roughly about 8, and I'll just do a quick render preview to get a sense of the settings. So yeah, EV 8 looks good. Anything else you can mess about with, but I think about 8's about right. Possibly I might even go 7.8. Just take it down. Sorry, 8.2 is what I meant. 8.2. Just take it down a notch. Okay. So, all right, we've got our material. We've attached the bitmap across to the environment map. We've set up our exposure control. We've turned off use physical camera controls. We're going to use the global exposure range instead. Okay, I can close those two things down. Now, if you haven't suddenly seen the image, I'll just go Alt and W, so I'm going to go in here, I'm just going to see the whole screen. If your image hasn't already landed in the window like this, we can go up to Views, Viewport Background, and we can just check that box there. If it's not already checked, just check it there, and then the image should appear in your background. Okay, so like mine, it should appear. Okay, so what we're going to do is We're also going to go into our into our scene setup. So we're going to our render setup, sorry, is what I meant to say. And in here, I need to change the output file size. I need that image aspect basically to be the same as the photograph. That's important. Okay, so let me just get some numbers from that photograph. So back into my materials, click on the image the image map itself, and if I scroll down and I click it, yeah, I'm going to have to click it, so click it once. Down here I can see that it's 4608 pixels by 3456 pixels, so 4608 by 3456. I'm going to transfer that to a custom setting over here, so 4608 by 3456. Hit the tab key just to make sure that that's been entered. Okay, so now I've got the ratio, basically the image aspect ratio is now the same with my render output as it is with my original image. That's important. Okay, so back into the perspective window. Here is where we've got to do a little bit of messing about, and this is kind of critical stuff, but this is where it's starting to get critical. So I'm just using my Alt and left mouse button, right mouse button, just to begin the orientation of that grid so it roughly lines up with the scene that I'm looking at. Not an easy thing to do first time round, it takes a little bit of messing about, and you've got to tweak it. When it's nearly there, okay, we're going to refine it in a moment, but before we refine it, we've got to convert this perspective viewport to a camera. So Control and C will change the perspective to a camera, and you'll notice now up here in the top left hand corner it says physical camera as opposed to perspective. Okay, so that camera is basically the camera view that we're going to try and align with the original image. So I'm now going to go over to the Utilities tab. I'm using Perspective Match. I'm going to hit Show Vanishing Lines. Target cameras are not supported by Perspective Match, and it's a target camera, so I just need to make sure, yeah, you need a free camera, not a target camera. So I'm just going to have to go into my settings here and make sure that that is in fact not a physical camera. Turn the target off. There we go. That's good that happened to me, because otherwise you'd have to deal with that. So okay, I've turned the camera target off, and I'm going to go back now to my Utilities tab, and I'm going to hit Perspective Match and Show Vanishing Lines, and there we go. This time it worked. I'm just going to hit Shift and F. There we go, Shift and F. Okay, now the camera is looking for more information. With these vanishing lines, it's looking for more information to help it align itself to the scene. So what we're going to do is we've got our X, Y and Z coordinates down here. So I'm going to start with the Z coordinates. I'm going to take this and align it to something in the Z axis, like so. You've got to click on the little dots at the end. You can pick up the actual helper at any point, but to move them you've got to pick up the dots. So there's one. This one looks good over here maybe, and I might just do that. Okay, I'll do the Y axis now. So the Y axis is running across this way. I'm going to use that beam at the top. Now that beam's got a bend in it, so I'm just going to go from point to point and not try and follow it exactly, because it's got a little bend there in the beam. But if I go close to the pillar, close to the end, it'll give me a better reading. This one down here, I could, let's see, what else could I use? I could use another beam, I suppose. A cross beam like that, just to help me align things. Takes a little bit of refining, that's for sure. And then the x-axis, we're going to just take that and rotate it down onto the floor. Can get a little bit tricky, but I'm just fiddling around until things sit relatively well. I still feel like things aren't quite right. I like that there's a little slide off. I can feel it from right to left, and I think that's appropriate given the position of the original camera, but we might need to have a little play with that in a sec. Okay, so the grid's getting close. The scale's not bad. Now you can take any of these lines and just move them across the scene to see if you like see if they actually match up and if you like the actual setting, and if not, just do another little squeak. Okay, move that to there. I'm just inching it until I'm really happy with the alignment of the grid and its sense of replicating what's on the floor. Okay, so I'm just giving it a little final tweak here and there, just making sure that grid looks like it's sitting on the right floor. If anything, I feel like it seems to be, but possibly feels like it's rising slightly. You know what I mean? Just feels like it's rising off the ground just a little bit. Not easy to get it, but anyway, it's pretty damn close. If your grid is looking a little bit tiny and not as detailed, not as expansive as that, you can just go up to the snaps toggle, right click on it, go to home grid and change the perspective line view extent to something like 20 or whatever you want it to be, but it'll give you a sense of what's going on, and you can see the way it's rising. I feel like that's not true to the environment that we're in. Could be that it is falling away, the land's falling away like that, but something tells me that isn't quite right, although all the grid lines suggest otherwise. I think maybe it's one of these horizontals it's not quite right. Maybe I'm aiming incorrectly up here because of that slight bow in the steel. So I just got to get that right. That feels a bit better to me. It's going to go back up to snaps, right click, home grid. I'm going to reduce that extent down a bit. It's gone a bit crazy. So that feels better. Okay, that pretty much gets us where we need to be, but now that we've got it settled, let's not lose it. And so what we need to do is go make sure the physical camera is currently active, and if that suddenly just appeared on my screen, it's because I've activated the toggle layer explorer. Now we're going to go across to the hierarchy, and I'm going to use the link info to lock the rotation of that camera, and that will, from here on in, that'll mean that you can't accidentally move that camera around. So theoretically what we can now do is drop a bit of geometry into the arena, and when we move that geometry in that arena, it should feel like it's moving appropriately and scaling appropriately in that space in terms of scale. So if I turn it around, feels like it's doing the right thing. Okay, so that feels about right, although that scale seems a little bit distorted over here. There's a bit of distortion there, but we'll come back to that. Okay, I'm going to leave that there for a moment, and in the second part of the video we'll look at adding a matte to the ground floor so that we can introduce shadowing to that environment as well. Okay.